A central life goal of Napoleon Hill. If you believe you can achieve it, you can. You are now at the beginning of a course which, for the first time in the history of mankind, is based on the known factors which have always been applied by successful people and which must continue to be applied. Stylish formulations are not the point of this course. Such considerations have been made here. Rather, it is about presenting principles and laws in such a way that they can be applied by people from different walks of life. Some of the principles described here will be familiar to you, others you may be hearing about for the first time. For all the lessons, the value of this philosophy lies entirely in the mental stimulation that the listener receives, rather than in the actual course units. This course is therefore to be understood as a mental stimulus that encourages the course participant to direct his or her consciousness towards a clearly defined goal, and in this way to make efficient use of the enormous power that most people waste through cramped or aimless thinking. Regardless of what you understand by success or achievement, purposefulness is essential. However, purposefulness is also a quality that brings about mental changes in many related areas. The author has traveled long distances to see with his own eyes how Jack Dempsey prepares for an upcoming boxing match. He was able to observe that the boxer did not rely on just one form of training, but performed a variety of different exercises. The punching bag helped him with certain muscles and also trained his eye for speed. The dumbbells were again for training other muscles. Running helped him build up his leg and hip muscles. A well-balanced diet provided him with the materials to build muscle without fat. Adequate sleep, rest, and relaxation were also necessary. The student will not be interested in winning in the ring, but in winning the fight of life. Again, there are a number of factors to consider. A well-organized, alert, and energetic mind is the result of a series of stimuli. As a reminder, the mind also requires a range of exercises, just as the body does. Only in this way can it be systematically developed and encouraged. Horses are trained for different gaits. They are made to jump over obstacles, developing different gaits through habit and repetition. The human mind is trained and educated in a similar way. It is exposed to a series of mental stimuli. Before you have progressed far in this philosophy, you will already notice that as you listen to these course units, various thoughts relating to different topics will be running through your mind. For this reason, you should have a notepad and pen at hand and immediately write down the thoughts or ideas that come to you as you read. This way, you will have a collection of ideas. After you have worked through this course 2 or 3 times, these ideas will be enough to redesign your entire life plan. If you proceed in this way, your consciousness will soon act like a magnet and attract useful ideas out of the air. You would be doing yourself a bad favor if you approach this course with the attitude that you don't need any more knowledge and skills than you already have. The truth is that no one already knows enough about a subject to be able to speak the last word in that particular area. In the course of the long and arduous task of eliminating some of my own knowledge gaps and clearing the way for useful life truths, I have often seen in my mind's eye the inscription in large letters at the gateway to life, "Poor fool." This inscription was aimed at those who thought they already knew everything, while the inscription, "Poor sinner," was aimed at those who thought they were saints. None of us actually knows very much. Due to our nature, this cannot be otherwise. Humility, therefore, precedes success. Only if we are also humble in our hearts can we make use of the experiences and thought processes of others. Does this sound like a moral sermon? And if it did, what would be so bad about it? Even sermons, as dry as they can be at times, can be useful if they serve to reflect on the shadow areas of ourselves so that we get a rough idea of our smallness and superficiality. The study of the human being is best begun in the mind by taking stock of yourself. Once you know yourself thoroughly, If this can ever be the case, you will also know a great deal about others. To get to know others, not as they appear to be, but as they really are, you should study them as follows: by their posture and the way they walk, by the tone, pitch and fullness of their voice, by their gaze, is it evasive or straight, as well as their words, the type, quality and their direction. These open windows give you an insight into the person's soul and show you what they are really like. Going one step further, you should study the knowledge of human nature when the person is angry or upset, when he is in love, when money is involved, when he is alone and feels unobserved, when he is writing, when he has problems, when he is in a good mood and confident of victory, when he is depressed and sad, when he is exposed to a catastrophic situation, when he wants to make a good impression, when he learns of the misfortune of others, when he learns of the happiness of others, when he loses at a sporting activity, and when he is alone and thoughtful. Before you can really get to know a person, you have to observe them in all of the aforementioned moods, and perhaps even more. In other words, you cannot judge a person if you base your judgment only on what you see in the moment. Appearances undoubtedly count, but they are often deceptive. This course has been designed so that the student who masters the units does not rely solely on snapshots when judging themselves and others. The student who has internalized this philosophy will be able to see through the outer shell and not be blinded by false faces, clothing, so-called culture and the like, but look deep inside the other person. That is a very bold statement. It would not be made here if the author of this philosophy had not come to the conclusion, through years of experimentation and analysis, that this promise can be made. Some who know the manuscript of this course have asked why it was not called a salesman's course. The answer is that the word salesperson is usually used in the context of marketing goods or services. Such a designation would therefore have been too narrow and would not have reflected the true nature of this course. It is true that this course also has to do with selling, but in a much broader sense of the word. This philosophy should enable those who have internalized it to successfully sell themselves on their life's journey with a minimum of resistance and friction. Such a course must therefore help the participant to organize and utilize many of the truths overlooked by the majority of people and to break away from mediocrity. Not all people want to know the truth about all areas that have a lasting impact on life. For the author, it was a great surprise that so few people are willing to learn the truth when it could reveal their own weaknesses. We prefer illusions to realities. If new truths are accepted at all, it is with the mini prize of the proverbial grain of salt. A few want to know more than a grain of truth. For this reason, the introductory lesson and this course unit address topics that clear the way for new ideas, so that these new ideas do not come as too much of a shock. The path of the truth-teller has always been rocky. Socrates had to drink from the cup of hemlock, Christ was crucified, Stephen was stoned, Bruno was tied to the stake, Galileo was placed under house arrest. The history books could be filled for pages with bloody incidents of this kind. Something in human nature resists new ideas. We don't like to have our attitudes and prejudices, inherited along with the household furniture, upset. All too many adults go into hibernation and live off the fat of outdated fetishes. If a new idea tries to gain entry, we wake up from our hibernation with a snort of rage. There is no reason for people today to close their minds to fresh ideas and new insights, and yet they do. Nothing is more tragic and more common than mental laziness. For every 10 physically lazy people, there are 10,000 who have stopped being mentally active. Stagnant brains are the breeding grounds of fear. An old farmer in Vermont used to begin his prayers with the request, "Lord, give me mental alertness." If more people followed his example, perhaps they could escape their prejudices. How pleasant life on this earth would then be. Every person should make it a point to constantly absorb new ideas from sources other than their everyday environment and profession. The intellect will weaken, stagnate and close down if it is not constantly exposed to new ideas. The countryman should visit the city more often and stroll through the streets lined with tall buildings. He would return to his farm mentally refreshed, more enthusiastic and in better spirits. The city dweller should go to the countryside more often and take in new sensory impressions that have nothing to do with his usual everyday life. Everyone needs a change of scenery at regular intervals, just as diversity and variety are necessary when it comes to food. The mind becomes more alert, elastic, quicker and more precise when it has been exposed to new ideas that go beyond the normal daily routine. As a participant in this course, you would do well to set aside the ideas and conceptions with which you carry out your daily work again and again, and enter a completely new and sometimes even completely unknown world of ideas and thoughts. Excellent. At the end of this course, you will continue your life with a new stock of thoughts, ideas, plans and perceptions, and you will be more efficient, enthusiastic and confident in your work, regardless of what it is. Don't be afraid of new ideas. They could be the difference between success and failure. Some of the ideas presented here do not require further explanation or proof, as they are familiar to practically everyone. Others are new, and for this reason the student may be reluctant to accept them. Every principle described in this course has been thoroughly tested by the author, and most of the laws have also been tested by a number of scientists and others who know how to distinguish between theory and practice. For these reasons, all the principles discussed here are known to work to the extent claimed. Nevertheless, no student is expected to adopt these units without having verified for himself by trial, experiment and investigation that they are sound laws. Above all, the student should be careful not to fall prey to the common evil of forming opinions without first examining the facts. Herbert Spencer expresses this vividly. There is a principle which puts a rule before every piece of information, which closes the door to every argument, and which inevitably keeps a man in permanent ignorance. It is called contempt before preliminary examination. The student should bear this principle in mind when studying the law of the mastermind. This law deals with an entirely new principle of mental activities, and this alone may be reason enough why some may not accept it until they have experimented with it. However, when one considers the fact that the law of the mastermind has been the basis of many achievements of people who are seen as geniuses, then this law takes on a significance that deserves more than just a superficial assessment. Many scientists argue that the law of the mastermind is the basis of virtually all major achievements that have resulted from a collaborative effort. Dr. Alexander said that the law of the mastermind, as described in this philosophy, not only had a hand and footing, but that the time would come when it would be taught in all psychology courses. Dr. Elmer Gates spoke out in favor of this law over 15 years ago. Dr. Gates is a scientist of the highest order and is in the same category as Edison. The author of this course has spoken to dozens of intelligent men who, while not all scientists, recognized the sound basis of the law of the mastermind. Persons who are not so qualified to judge such matters should therefore give their opinion on this principle only after they have first made a serious and systematic investigation. Allow me to briefly explain what this course unit has in store for you. As I have prepared myself for the application of this law, I may write this introduction on my own behalf. You will find the evidence in the following lessons that make up this course. The facts used in this course have been gathered over more than 25 years of professional and technical experience, and my only explanation for the rather liberal use of the personal pronoun in this course is that I am writing from personal experience. Before this course on the laws of success was published, I sent the manuscripts to 2 prestigious universities with the request that they be read by competent professors so that any statements that seemed unsound from a scientific point of view could be eliminated or corrected. This request was granted, and the manuscripts were subjected to a thorough examination. The result was that not a single change had to be made to the content, and only 1 or 2 formulations were changed. One of the examining professors made the following comments, among others: that boys and girls attending high school today are not thoroughly instructed in the 15 major sections of your work, I consider a tragedy. It is unfortunate that the accredited university to which I belong, as well as every other university, does not make your course an integral part of its curriculum. Since this course is intended to serve as a guide or orientation for achieving success, it is appropriate to briefly define the word success here. Success is the development of the power to achieve anything one aspires to in life without infringing on the rights of others. Above all, I would like to emphasize the word power, as it is inextricably linked to success. We live in a world and an age of intense competition, and the law of survival of the fittest is everywhere to be seen. Therefore, all those who strive for lasting success must achieve this success with the help of power. And what is power? Power is the orderly use of energy. It is no accident that this course is called the Laws of Success, because it teaches how to mentally organize facts, knowledge and skills to create a power center. This course promises you the following: that through its mastery and application, you can achieve anything you aspire to, but with the caveat that it is realistic. This limitation refers to your previous education, your wisdom or lack thereof, your physical stamina, your temperament, and all other qualities mentioned in the lessons of this course as prerequisites for achieving success. All those who have achieved success have, without exception, achieved their success either consciously or unconsciously through the implementation of all or some of the factors described here. If you doubt this statement, may I suggest that you first master these lessons to the extent that you can proceed with due accuracy and study men like Carnegie, Rockefeller, Hill, Harriman, Ford, and others of this ilk who have amassed great fortunes. You will then see that these people understood and applied the principle of the organized use of energy. This principle runs like a thread through this entire course. Almost 20 years ago, I interviewed Mr. Carnegie with the intention of writing a story about him. During that interview, I asked him what he attributed his successes to. With a slight twinkle in his eye, he replied, "Young man, would you please define what you mean by success before I answer that question?" He waited a little at first, and obviously noticed that I was a little embarrassed by this request. Then he continued, "Am I right in assuming that by the word success you are referring to my money?" I assured him that for most people, money was synonymous with success. To which he replied, "Well, if you want to know how I got my money, and that is the same as success to you, let me tell you that we have a mastermind here in our company, and that group consists of over a dozen men who comprise my personal team of supervisors, department heads, accountants and chemists, and other professionals. No single person in this group is the mastermind I am referring to here, but all of them work together in a coordinated, organized and focused manner towards a central goal, forming the aforementioned mastermind. Each individual in this group is focused on his task and in an exemplary manner. At that moment, the seed for this course was sown in my mind. However, this seed would not begin to germinate until much later. This conversation was the beginning of years of research and eventually led to the discovery of the mastermind principle described in the introductory lesson. I heard very well what Mr. Carnegie was saying. However, it took years of further knowledge gathering and numerous contacts from the business world before I finally realized what he was really saying and understood the underlying principle. This principle is about nothing more and nothing less than the organized use of energy, and that is what this course is based on. Carnegie's team formed a mastermind, and this mastermind was so well organized, so well coordinated, so powerful, that it made Mr. Carnegie millions of dollars in virtually every business area he took on. The steel industry in which this team operated was not the decisive factor in the accumulation of the Carnegie fortune. The same fortune could have been achieved by the mastermind in coal trading or banking, food or anywhere else, because there was power behind it. The kind of power that is also available to you if you have your own mental faculties in order and ally yourself with other well-organized people towards the achievement of a central goal in life. A careful investigation of some of Mr. Carnegie's former associates, which I made after beginning this course, revealed beyond doubt not only that there is such a principle, which we here call mastermind, but also that this principle was the main cause of Mr. Carnegie's successes. Probably no one had a closer contact with Mr. Carnegie than Mr. C.M. Schwab. Mr. Schwab described this subtle something in Mr. Carnegie's personality that enabled him to reach unimagined heights as follows. I have never known anyone who possessed so great an imagination, so vivid an intelligence, and so instinctive a grasp. I had the impression that he could read my thoughts and see through what I had ever done or was about to do. He seemed to hear the next word even before it was spoken. His mental alertness was remarkable, and his habit of observing everything attentively gave him a superior knowledge in countless areas. In all of this, however, his most extraordinary quality was his ability to inspire others. A great confidence emanated from him. If you were still undecided and had doubts about something, you would discuss it with Mr. Carnegie. He could make it clear in an instant that you were on the right track. After that, doubt gave way to faith. Conversely, he immediately recognized the weak points in a plan. This ability to attract and motivate others came from his own strength. The results of this leadership style were amazing. I suspect that there has never been a man in the business world who, without being versed in the technical side of his industry, made no secret of the fact that he was not a steel expert, yet was able to build such a company. Mr. Carnegie's ability to inspire men was based on something deeper than mere good judgment. With the last sentence, Mr. Schwab expressed a thought that confirms the mastermind theory. He made the statement that Mr. Carnegie could have achieved equally good success in any other industry. It is obvious that his successes came from his understanding of his own consciousness and the consciousness of other people, not from expertise in the steel industry. This is a reassuring thought, especially for those who have not yet achieved extraordinary success, as it shows that success is all about correctly applying the laws and principles available to everyone. These laws are comprehensively described in the units of this course. Mr. Carnegie learned how to implement the mastermind principle. This enabled him to combine his own thinking with the abilities of others and to direct this bundled energy towards a central goal. Every strategist, whether in business or any other field, understands the value of an orderly and coordinated effort. Every military strategist understands why he must sow the seeds of disunity among enemy forces, because in doing so he undermines the power of coordination. Much was made of the effects of propaganda in the last World War, and it seems no exaggeration to say that the disorganizing forces of propaganda were more destructive than the weapons and explosives. One of the major turning points of the World War came when the Allied forces were placed under the command of the French General Foch. According to well-informed military circles, this step led to the defeat of the opposing armies. Any modern railroad bridge is an excellent example of the value of organized energy use, as it shows how thousands of tons of weight can be supported by a relatively small group of steel piers and girders arranged so that the weight is distributed over the entire group. A man had 7 sons who were constantly fighting among themselves. One day he called them together and told them that he wanted to show them what they were doing with this lack of cohesion. He had prepared a bundle of 7 carefully tied sticks. One son after another was to try to break this bundle. Each one tried in vain. Then he cut the string and gave each of his sons a stick to break over his knee. After all the sticks had been broken, he said, "If you work together in harmony, you are like a bundle of sticks, and no one can beat you. But if you constantly quarrel, anyone can break you with ease." The story of this man and his 7 quarrelsome sons teaches a valuable lesson. This lesson applies to every kind of community, to employers and employees, to cities and nations. Organized force can be very powerful. However, if not used intelligently, this power can also be a dangerous one. For this reason, Course Unit 16 describes how this power of organized effort must be directed so that it leads to success, a success that is based on truth and justice and ultimately leads to happiness. One of the greatest tragedies of this age of struggle and greed is the fact that so few people devote themselves to an activity that suits them best. One of the goals of this course is to show each participant a special niche in which they can find abundant prosperity and happiness. This entire course is designed to inspire you to discover yourself and your hidden strengths, and to awaken the ambition, vision, and determination to achieve what is rightfully yours, safely and harmoniously. Almost 30 years ago, a man worked in the same company as Henry Ford and did more or less the same job as Ford. It is said that this man was in some ways even a more competent worker than Ford. Today, this man is still employed there and works for less than $100 a week, while Mr. Ford is the richest man on earth. What big difference is there between these two men? What made them so far apart financially? Only this: Ford understood and applied the principle of organized effort. The other did not. As this is being written in the small town of Shelby, Ohio, the principle of organized effort is being used for the first time in world history to bring about closer cooperation between the churches and the businesses of a community. The clergy and the business people have formed an alliance that benefits both sides by strengthening both. This alliance has brought both material and moral benefits to the city of Shelby, such as are enjoyed by few cities of comparable size in America. The plan is working so well and satisfactorily that similar efforts are now underway in other American cities. To give you a more concrete idea of how effectively the principle of the organized use of force can be applied, may I invite you to consider for a moment what the result would be if every church and every newspaper and every Rotary Club and every advertising club and every women's league and every civic club and every similar association in your city or in any other city formed an alliance with the intention of combining their power and using it for the benefit of all the members of these organizations. The results of such a pooling of power would be beyond your wildest imagination. A good encyclopedia contains most of the facts known in the world. However, these are as useless as sand dunes unless they are organized and expressed through action. In the world of organized effort, there are 3 outstanding powers: the churches, the schools, and the newspapers. If these 3 great powers and public opinion makers came together to bring about the needed changes in human behavior, the result would be tremendous. They could, for example, within a single generation, so change the present standards of professional ethics that it would be practically professional suicide to conduct business in any other way than by observing the Golden Rule. Such an alliance would have enough influence within a generation to change professional, social, and moral trends throughout the civilized world. Such an alliance would also have sufficient power to demonstrate desirable ideals to future generations. As mentioned earlier, power is the organized application of force. success is based on power. I have given the examples just mentioned so that you understand what is meant by the term organized use of force or power. To explain this more clearly, I repeat the statement that the accumulation of great wealth and the achievement of any high goal in life, for which we usually use the term success, are based on the understanding and internalization of the main principles from these lessons. This course is in complete harmony with the principles of business and with the principles of applied psychology. You will notice that these lessons, which do not do without the knowledge of psychology in their practical application, also contain sufficient explanation of the psychological principles necessary for easy understanding of these lessons. Before the manuscripts for this course were sent to the publisher, they were also submitted to some of America's most prominent bankers and businessmen, so that they could be examined, analyzed, and criticized from a practical point of view. One of New York's most prominent bankers returned the manuscript with the following comment: "I have a master's degree from Yale University, but I would gladly exchange all that it has given me for what the laws of success have taught me, if I had had access to it during my studies at university. My wife and daughter have also read the manuscripts, and my wife has called your course the Master Keyboard of Life, because she believes that anyone who has understood its implementation can use it to perform a perfect symphony in their respective fields, just as a pianist can play any melody once he has mastered the keyboard of his piano and the basics of music. No two people in the world are absolutely the same. For this reason, no two people will get exactly the same result from this course and come to a completely identical conclusion. Each student should listen to the course, understand it, and then implement the content he or she needs to develop a well-rounded personality. This course is designed to help the participant discover his or her natural talents and inclinations, and to organize, coordinate, and utilize the knowledge gained from the experience. I have spent over 20 years collecting, evaluating, and classifying the material that has gone into this course. Over the past 14 years, I have analyzed more than 16,000 men and women. I have carefully organized all the facts obtained from these analyses and incorporated them into this course. These analyses revealed many interesting facts that helped to make the course practical and applicable. For example, I discovered that 95% of the people I analyzed were unsuccessful. Only 5% were successful, and by unsuccessful, I mean that they failed to achieve happiness in life and could only fulfill the normal needs of life with an excess of effort. If the lives of all the inhabitants of the earth could be analyzed, I suspect that a similar relationship between the successful and the unsuccessful would emerge. The struggle for mere existence is incredibly great for people who have not learned to organize and direct their natural talents, while on the other hand, the satisfaction of needs and even the acquisition of luxury goods is relatively easy for those people who have mastered the principle of organized effort. One of the most surprising results of the study of the 16,000 people mentioned above was the discovery that the 95% who had to be considered failed were in this group because they did not pursue a central life goal, while the 5% had a clear line and direction, but also had precise plans for achieving their goals. Another important fact that emerged from this research was that the 95% of the unsuccessful were doing work that they disliked, while the 5% were doing work that they enjoyed. It is doubtful whether people fail when they do the work that appeals to them the most. Furthermore, the above-mentioned study showed that the 5% of successful people had all acquired the habit of saving money, while the 95% had no savings to show for it. This is a point that the student should seriously consider. One of the main objectives of this course is to help the participant to carry out their professional activity in such a way that it is as rewarding as possible, both financially and in terms of professional satisfaction. A central objective. The adjective central is to be understood here in the sense of clearly defined, unambiguous, or concrete. This clarification is important because this word is very important for the rest of this lesson. It is distressing enough that 95% of the people in this world wander aimlessly through life without the slightest idea of what work is best suited to them, and also without any idea that a central goal towards which they are working is an absolute requirement. There is both a psychological and an economic rationale for choosing a clear line. Let's look at the psychological side first. It is a recognized psychological principle that human beings always act in accordance with their prevailing thoughts. Any central goal that is deliberately planted and held in the daily consciousness with the intention of realizing it eventually saturates the entire subconscious mind in such a way that it influences the physical action of the body towards the achievement of that purpose. You should choose your central purpose very carefully. After you have set it, you should write it down and post it in a place where you will see it at least once a day. The psychological purpose of this is to imprint it on your subconscious mind in such a lasting way that it accepts this goal, this task, this concern as a guideline or goal statement, which ultimately dominates your activities in life and leads you to achieve this goal via a chain of events. The psychological principle by which you imprint your central goal on your subconscious is called autosuggestion. This is a suggestion that you repeatedly give yourself. In a way, it is a form of self-hypnosis. However, don't be put off by this term, as this very principle was used by Napoleon Bonaparte to rise from a poor Corsican to the dictator of France. It also helped Thomas A. Edison to rise from humble beginnings as a newspaper boy to become the world's leading inventor. It was the same principle that helped Lincoln overcome the wide gulf between his humble origins in a log cabin in the mountains of Kentucky to become President of the USA. And it was this principle that made Theodore Roosevelt the youngest holder of the American presidency. As long as you are sure that your request is one that will bring you lasting happiness, you need not be afraid of the principle of autosuggestion. Make sure that your central goal is a constructive one and that it does not bring trouble or hardship to anyone. Then apply the principle of autosuggestion to achieve this goal quickly. On the street corner opposite the room where I am writing now, I see a man standing there selling peanuts all day long. He is always very busy. When he is not selling peanuts to a passerby, he is busy roasting and packing his goods. This man belongs to the large army of the aforementioned 95% who lack a central goal. He sells peanuts, but not because this activity brings him fulfillment, and he would rather do this than anything else, but because he has never bothered to sit down to think about his central goal, which would bring him a greater return on his actions. He is a peanut salesman because he is drifting in the sea of life, and the tragedy of his work is not least that he would achieve a much more rewarding result with the same effort in other areas. Another tragedy in this man's work is the fact that he unwittingly makes use of the principle of autosuggestion, albeit to his detriment. If you could draw his thoughts, you would surely find nothing but his peanut roaster, some paper bags, and a lot of people standing around. This man could devote himself to another activity if he had the vision and ambition to imagine himself in a more lucrative trade, and if he had the stamina to hold that image in his mind until it drove him to take the appropriate practical steps. If he put his energy into work that was focused on achieving a central goal, he could achieve significantly more. One of my closest friends is one of this country's best-known journalists and speakers. About 10 years ago, he was introduced to the principle of autosuggestion and immediately began to put it into practice. He worked out a plan that proved to be very useful. At that time, he was neither a writer nor a speaker. Every day, just before going to sleep, he closed his eyes and imagined a long conference table at which he placed some well-known gentleman whose qualities he wanted to acquire for himself. At this table sat Lincoln, Napoleon, Washington, Emerson, and Hubbard. He then entered into a conversation with these imaginary persons, which went something like this. Mr. Lincoln, I wish to incorporate into my character the qualities of patience and fairness to all men, and to acquire the humor which is one of your salient characteristics. I need these qualities and will not rest until I have acquired them. Mr. Washington, I want to acquire the qualities of patriotism and leadership which I value so highly in you. Mr. Emerson, I wish to acquire the qualities of foresight which you have exemplified, and the ability to understand the laws of nature as they are expressed in the stones and growing trees and flowing streams and sprouting flowers, as well as in the faces of little children. Napoleon, I would like to make the quality of self-confidence visible in you, and the ability to emerge stronger from defeat a part of my character. And Mr. Hubbard, I want to acquire the ability to express myself as clearly, unambiguously, and powerfully as you do. Night after night, over many months, this man convened his imaginary council until he had finally imprinted these qualities on his own subconscious mind in such a way that he formed a combination of all these personalities. The subconscious mind can be compared to a magnet. Once it is activated and thoroughly saturated with a central goal, it has a strong tendency to attract whatever is necessary to achieve that goal. Like attracts like. You can see proof of this in every blade of grass and every growing tree. The acorn attracts from the soil and from the air all the necessary substances for the oak to grow. It has never happened that it grows partly into an oak and partly into a poplar. Every grain of wheat that is planted in the soil attracts the materials from which wheat grows again. There is never any mistake here, not even when wheat and barley grow side by side. All people are also subject to this law of attraction. Go to a cheap doss house in any city, and you will find people who are spiritually inclined in the same direction. On the other hand, go to an affluent neighborhood, and you will find like-minded people. Successful people seek the company of other successful people, while unsuccessful people seek the company of unsuccessful people. Human nature does not seem to determine its level with any more certainty than a person seeks the company of others who roughly correspond to his financial and intellectual status. A professor, a university teacher, and a tramp have nothing in common. If they work together, they would hinder each other. Oil and water do not mix, nor do people who have nothing in common. All this brings us to the following statement. You will attract people who are in harmony with your own outlook on life, whether you want them to be or not. Since this is true, it is all the more important that you give your consciousness a central goal that will help you attract people who will help you rather than hinder you. Let's assume that your central goal is very far from your current life situation. So what? It is your right, indeed it is your duty, to aim high. You owe it to yourself and the community in which you live to set high goals. There is much to suggest that someone who has set a central goal can realistically achieve anything. Don't tell the world what you can do, show them. A few years ago, a man was sentenced to life in prison in Arizona. As he himself claimed, he was a bad person through and through at the time. He also had tuberculosis and was expected to die within a year. This man had every reason to feel despondent. Public opinion was very much against him, and he didn't have a single friend in the whole world who would have stood by him. Then something happened in this man's mind that restored his health, stopped the tuberculosis, and finally even opened the prison gates and gave him back his freedom. What was that? He decided to drive out consumption and regain his health. That was a very central goal. Within less than a year of making this decision, he had beaten the disease. He then expanded his central goal by focusing his thinking on freedom. Soon the prison walls opened up to him. No undesirable environment is strong enough to prevent a person who knows how to apply the principle of autosuggestion from realizing a central goal. Such a person can throw off the shackles of poverty. He can destroy deadly pathogens. He can free himself from miserable circumstances and achieve prosperity and fulfillment. All great leaders base their position on a central goal. Their followers are happy to follow them if they know that the person at the top is pursuing a central goal and has the courage to back it up with action. Every stubborn horse notices immediately when the coachman has a central goal and grips the reins firmly again. When a person with a central goal goes through a crowd, he is allowed to pass. People step on the toes of a hesitant person who is not sure of what he is doing and refuse to let him pass. Nowhere is the lack of a central goal more obvious and damaging than in dealings between parents and children. Children very quickly sense their parents' fickle attitudes and like to take advantage of them. This is true throughout life. People with a central goal inspire respect. If a steamship lost its paddle wheels on the open sea and began to turn in circles, it would soon use up its fuel without ever reaching the shore again, even if it still had enough fuel on board to cover the distance to the shore several times. Those who live without a central goal, which in turn must be supported by a clear plan for its achievement, resemble a ship that has lost a paddle wheel. Hard work and good intentions are not enough to help a person achieve success, for how could such a person know that he has already achieved success if he has never set himself a central goal? Every well-built house began with a central goal. This was accompanied by a clear plan in the form of one or more construction drawings. Imagine what would happen if someone tried to build a house on a haphazard basis and dispensed with plans altogether. The workers from the individual trades would constantly be in each other's way. Building materials would be lying around randomly, and everyone would have a different idea of what the house should look like. The result would be chaos and misunderstandings, as well as a huge waste of money. Have you ever considered that most people who leave school take up employment or a profession without ever giving the slightest thought to what their central goal in life is, let alone making plans for it? Since science provides us with fairly precise guidelines on how to analyze character and find a suitable life purpose, it is a modern tragedy that 95% of the world's adult population must be considered losers in that they have not found their own niche in today's working world. If success depends on power, and if power is synonymous with an organized use of force, and if the first step towards order and organization is a central goal, then it is easy to see why such a central focus is crucial to success. As long as people do not have a central goal in life, they waste their energies and get bogged down in so many areas and different directions that they cannot possibly build up power, but on the contrary, promote indecision and weaknesses. With the help of a small magnifying glass, you can clearly demonstrate to yourself the value of an organized use of power. Using such a magnifying glass, you can direct the sun's rays so strongly onto a central point that they burn a hole in a wooden board. As soon as you remove the lens, which here symbolizes the central target, the same rays of sunlight can shine on the same board for another 1,000,000 years without ever burning a hole in it. 1,000 correctly arranged dry electric batteries connected by wires generate enough power to run a large machine for hours. However, the same cells would not even get this machine started if they were used alone. Your mental abilities are similar to these dry batteries. If you use your abilities in an orderly fashion, as illustrated in these lessons, and direct them towards the achievement of a central goal, you can benefit from the cooperative and accumulative principle from which power arises. This is an orderly and organized application of force. Andrew Carnegie's advice was, "Put all your eggs in one basket and then make sure nobody bumps into it." By this, he meant that we should not waste our energy on 1,000 different things. Carnegie was a true economist and knew very well that most people would do well if they focused their energies on one thing and then did that thing in an exemplary way. As the plan to create this course took shape, I presented the first manuscript to a professor at the University of Texas and told him very enthusiastically that I had discovered a principle that would be very helpful to me in any public speaking I had yet to do, as it would help me prepare better and control my thoughts better. He looked at the list of points for a few minutes, then turned to me and said, "Yes, your discovery will help you to give better speeches, but that's not all. It will also help you to write more clearly, because in your previous writings you have sometimes digressed. If you have a central thought, like when you describe a beautiful lake in your speeches, then your statements will seem as fresh as the clear stream. Your thoughts will flow like water down a mountain stream or like a songbird gliding through the air. Your expression will approach the goal, the epitome of your message. This is as true in writing as it is in speaking, because your points are the foundation of orderly thought. A man without legs meets another man who is blind. To assist the blind man, the man without legs says, 'Let me climb on your back. Then I'll use your legs and you use my eyes. That way we'll make faster progress.' Power comes from joint efforts. This point cannot be emphasized enough because it is one of the most important messages of this course. The great fortunes of this world were created through the principle of united effort. What an individual can achieve in a lifetime is meager at best. What can be created through the principle of alliance is virtually limitless. The mastermind that Carnegie referred to during his conversation with me consisted of a dozen thinkers. This group included people of virtually every temperament and inclination. Each individual took on a specific role, and only that role. They were united by an unclouded understanding and a great team spirit. Carnegie's task was to maintain harmony among these men. He did this job excellently. If you are familiar with the rules of American football, you know that the winning team is the one that best coordinates the efforts of its players. Teamwork leads to victory. This also applies to the game of life. As you strive for success, you should always keep in mind that you need to know what you want from your central goal and the value of the principle of organized effort in achieving your goal. In an unclear way, almost everyone has a central goal, namely the desire for more money. However, this is not a central goal in the sense in which this term is used in this lesson. Before your goal can be considered a central goal, even if it is the acquisition of money, you would first need to decide on the exact approach you want to take to acquiring money. To say that you should take up self-employment would not be enough. You would need to decide exactly what the activity is. You would also need to decide where you want to locate your business. You also need to decide what business criteria you want to use to run this business. The most important question is, what is your central goal in life? And many people answer this as follows. My central goal in life is to make myself useful, to be of the greatest possible service to the world, and to achieve a good standard of living in the process. Well, such an answer is about as clear as comparing the idea of the size of a frog with the dimensions of the universe. This course unit is not intended to tell you what your life's work should or could look like. Such an undertaking could only be undertaken after a thorough analysis of your personality. Rather, the aim here is to impress upon your consciousness a clear idea of the importance of a central goal, whereby the type is secondary. In addition, you should be made aware of the importance of an organized use of energy, which will give you the necessary power to achieve your central goal. Careful observation of the business philosophies of over 100 men and women who have achieved extraordinary success in their respective fields revealed that each of these individuals was able to make quick and clear decisions. The habit of proceeding with a central goal will also instill in you the habit of quick decision-making. This habit will benefit you in all situations. In addition, the habit of working towards a central goal will help you to focus your attention on a specific task until you have completed it in an exemplary manner. Focused energy and the habit of working towards a central goal are two basic prerequisites for the successful completion of any task. These two prerequisites always come in pairs. The most famous and successful businessmen have always been those who had a quick decision-making ability and a central goal in front of them. Some examples. Woolworth chose as his central goal to flood America with 5 and 10-cent stores and focused on that task until he achieved it. Wrigley concentrated on the manufacture and distribution of chewing gum until his brand was known throughout the world. Edison focused his work on harmonizing the laws of nature, discovering more correlations than any other man alive to date. Westinghouse concentrated on the construction and operation of public utilities and became a multimillionaire in the process. Ingersoll concentrated on the $1 clock and sold it worldwide. His idea made him millions. Statler concentrated on feel-good hotels and became wealthy in the process. Edwin C. Barnes concentrated on the sale of Edison dictating machines and was able to retire from business as a young man with more money than he could ever use up. Woodrow Wilson focused on the White House for 25 years and became its chief tenant thanks to its central purpose. Abraham Lincoln focused on freeing the slaves and became America's greatest president. Martin W. Littleton heard a lecture that sparked in him the desire to become a great lawyer. He focused on this goal and is now the most successful lawyer in America. He sometimes receives up to $50,000 for a single case. Rockefeller concentrated on oil and became the richest man of his generation. Ford concentrated on tin boxes and became a rich and powerful man as a result. Carnegie focused on steel and immortalized his name in libraries across America. Gillette focused on a safety razor, gave the world a baby smooth shave, and became a multimillionaire. George Eastman concentrated on Kodak. This idea brought him a fortune and millions of people much joy. Russell Conwell concentrated on presenting just one book, Diamond Veins. This idea brought him millions of dollars. Hearst concentrated on sensationalism and also became a millionaire. Helen Keller concentrated on learning to speak, and although she was deaf, dumb, and blind, she achieved her goal. John H. Patterson concentrated on cash registers. This benefited him and many others. The German Kaiser focused on war and got a good dose of it. Fleischmann focused on a small yeast cake and sent this pastry around the world. Marshall Field focused on the world's largest retail store, and it was built before his eyes. Philip Armour focused on meat canneries and made a huge fortune. The Wright brothers focused on airplanes and dominated the skies. Pullman concentrated on the sleeping car. This idea made him rich and gave millions of train passengers a comfortable ride. Millions of people focus on poverty and misfortune every day and get more than enough of it. There is something that you can do better than anyone else in the world. You should look for it and not rest until you have found it. You should make this your central concern, your main goal, and direct all your efforts in such a way that you approach it with a winning attitude. In your search for the job that is tailor-made for you, you would do well to bear in mind that you can probably only achieve the greatest success if you like your work and enjoy it. Only if you can put your heart and soul into your work will you achieve the best results. Let us now revisit the psychological principles on which this course unit is based for better understanding and illustration, as you cannot afford to miss the real reason behind imprinting a central goal on your consciousness. These principles are as follows. The first principle: every voluntary movement of the human body is triggered, controlled, and directed by thought. The second principle: the presence of a thought or mental image in your consciousness tends to trigger a corresponding feeling and cause you to translate this feeling into a corresponding muscular action that is in complete harmony with the nature of your thought. Example: you are thinking of twitching an eyelash, and there are no opposing influences or thoughts in your daytime consciousness at that time. In this case, the motor nerve will execute your thought from the brain, whereupon the corresponding muscle movement takes place immediately. Let's express this principle from a different perspective. For example, you choose a central goal in life and make a conscious decision to realize this goal. From the moment you make the decision, this goal becomes the dominant thought in your consciousness, and you are constantly on the lookout for relevant facts, information, and knowledge. Once your central goal is anchored in your consciousness, the conscious mind begins both consciously and unconsciously to collect and store material that will help you achieve your goal. The triggering factor that determines your central goal is the intrinsic desire. No one else can choose your predominant desire for you. However, once you have made this decision yourself, it becomes the central goal, and you shine a floodlight, as it were, on your goal until it is realized, unless you allow it to be pushed away again by conflicting desires or longings. To ensure successful realization, the central goal must be supported by a burning desire. I have noticed that boys and girls who transfer to college and have to pay for this education seem to derive more benefit from the curriculum than those whose education costs are covered. The reason for this may be found in the fact that those who are willing to pay for their education also have a burning desire to absorb knowledge. Science has proven beyond doubt that through the principle of autosuggestion, every deeply rooted desire saturates and permeates the entire body and consciousness with the desire in question and literally transforms the consciousness into a powerful magnet that attracts the desired object. So that this statement is not misunderstood, allow me to rephrase it. The mere desire for a car will not result in this vehicle rolling up in front of your home. The deep desire for a car, however, leads to corresponding actions through which the car can be paid for. Merely wishing for freedom will not open the cell door for a prisoner. Only the deep desire drives him to do something that brings him closer to freedom. The sequence from deep desire to realization. First, the deep desire. Next, the crystallization of that desire into a central goal. Then, sufficient action to achieve that goal. These three steps are always necessary for the safe achievement of a goal. I once knew a poor girl who felt a deep desire, a longing for a well-off husband. This desire was fulfilled, but only after she had transformed it into the development of an attractive personality, which in turn led to her attracting the attention of a suitable man. I myself once had a deep desire to be able to analyze human character accurately, and this desire was so strong and so deeply rooted that it drove me to study people for practically 10 years. George S. Parker makes fountain pens that are among the finest of their kind in the world, and although he operates his business out of the small town of Janesville, he has been able to make his product known around the globe and sell it in every civilized country in the world. Over 20 years ago, Mr. Parker instilled in his mind the goal of making the best fountain pen available at an affordable price. This goal was driven by a deep desire to realize it, and if you own a fountain pen, there is a good chance that you will find evidence of the success of his wish in your own home. You yourself are both the client and the builder, and like all of us who build houses out of wood, brick and steel, you too must draw up plans according to which you will erect your building of success. You live in a fantastic age where the materials for success are plentiful and cheap. You have at your disposal the archives of public libraries, the carefully compiled results of 2,000 years of research in virtually any field in which you want to operate. If you want to be a preacher, the entire history of what people who lived before you have learned is available to you. If you want to be a mechanic, The entire history of mechanical inventions and the discovery and use of metals and metal-like materials is available to you. If you want to become a lawyer, the entire history of the legal system is available to you. If you want to become a farmer, all the knowledge you need about agriculture and animal husbandry is at your disposal. The world has never had so many opportunities to offer as it does today. There is an overwhelming demand for people who can perform better in a wide variety of fields. This course unit is not complete until you have made a decision regarding your central life goal. Then describe this goal in writing and put it in a place where you will see it every morning when you wake up and every night before you go to sleep. We tend to postpone and procrastinate. Why make a fuss about it? You know that you have to cut your own wood and carry your own water. You set your own central goal. So why go on at length about something you already know? Anyone can start. Persevering is not. You have to set your central goal for yourself. No one can or will do that for you. When will you do it, and how? Start now by analyzing your wishes and desires and find out what you want. Then make the firm decision to achieve it. In Lesson 3, you will learn the next step and how to proceed. In this success course, nothing is left to luck. Every step is shown to you in detail. Your part is to follow these instructions until you reach your goal. Make sure that this goal is clear and specific, and that it is supported by perseverance and persistence. The word impossible has no place in this plan. When formulating your central goal, also remember that you cannot aim too high. Furthermore, remember the eternal truth that you can only arrive if you set out on the journey. If your goal in life is vague, your results will also be vague and meager. Be clear about what you want, when you want it, why you want it, and how you intend to go about it. Psychology teachers and psychology students know this as the VIW formula: what, when, why, and how. Please listen to this course unit several times, each time a week apart. Your success in implementing this course and achieving your goals will depend largely, perhaps even entirely, on your ability to follow all the instructions contained herein. Do not make up your own study rules. Instead, follow the rules given here. These are the result of years of thought and practical experimentation. If you are of a more experimental nature, you should wait until you have mastered these course contents to the extent recommended by the author. You will then be able to carry out your own experiments from a safe position. For the time being, you should be content with the role of course participant. Once you have mastered this content, it may well be that the participant will also become a teacher and a facilitator. If you follow the instructions faithfully, you will succeed as surely as water flows downhill. Practical tips for implementation. In the introductory lesson, you were familiarized with the psychological principle of the mastermind. You are now ready to use this principle to transform your central goal into a reality. It has probably already occurred to you that you might as well do without a central goal if you do not also have a very clear and practical plan for its realization. Your first step is to define your central goal. Your next step is to write a clear and concise description of that goal. Next, you should set out in writing the plan or plans you will use to achieve your goal. The final step involves forming an alliance with one or more people who will work with you to implement these plans and bring your central goal to fruition. The purpose of this friendly alliance is to use the mastermind principle to implement your plan. This alliance should be between you and people who have your best interests at heart. If you are married, one of the mastermind partners could be your life partner. Other participants in this alliance could be your mother, father, siblings, or friends. If the people you approach to participate in your covenant believe in prayer, ask them to include the purpose of this covenant in their daily prayer. Now for one of the most important rules to follow. Make an agreement with one or all of the participants in your friendly covenant that you are to express to them as positively and definitely as possible that you know you can and will accomplish your central purpose. This affirmation or statement should be expressed to them at least once a day, more often if possible. These steps must be followed persistently and in the firm belief that they will get you to your desired goal. It is not enough to follow these plans for a few days or weeks and then put them back in the drawer. You must follow the procedure described until you have reached your central goal, regardless of how long this takes. From time to time, a change of plan may be necessary. In this case, you should make the necessary change immediately. No one has sufficient foresight to foresee all eventualities. If a member of your alliance loses faith in the effectiveness of the Mastermind principle, say goodbye to this person immediately and look for a replacement without delay. Andrew Carnegie expressed to the author that he had to replace some members of his Mastermind. He even mentioned that almost every one of the original members later had to be replaced by a more loyal and enthusiastic person. If you are surrounded by disloyal and unfriendly people, you cannot succeed. This is true no matter what your central goal is. Success is based on loyalty, confidence, honesty, cohesion, and other positive forces that must be present in the environment. Many students will probably want to form alliances with people with whom they already have professional or business relationships in order to achieve their professional goals. In such cases, the rules described also apply. Your central goal may be one that is close to your heart or one that benefits your industry or sector. The Mastermind principle works no differently in cases where this is the case than in purely personal cases. If you fail in implementing this principle, either temporarily or permanently, it is because a participant in your alliance has not entered into it in a spirit of confidence, loyalty, and purposeful seriousness. Your central goal should become your hobby horse. Ride this hobby horse constantly. Take it to bed with you, eat with it, play with it, work with it, live with it, and think with it. Whatever you wish for, you can get it if your wish is intense enough and you maintain it, always provided that it is a realistic wish and you believe that you will achieve it. There is a big difference between merely wishing and firmly believing in it. Not understanding this difference has brought failure to millions of people. People who go for it are also those who believe in achieving it. For someone who believes that they can achieve their central goal, there is no such thing as impossible. Such people know that their efforts will be crowned with success. If one plan fails, replace it with another. Every worthwhile result was at some point also jeopardized by setbacks before success could be achieved. Edison made over 10,000 attempts before he succeeded in developing his first talking machine. If there is one word that deserves to be anchored in your consciousness in capital letters, it is perseverance. You now have the central key to success. Insert it into the temple of knowledge and unlock the entrance gate. But that's not all. You must also enter. Knowledge will not be laid at your feet. If you are new to these principles, it will not be easy at first. You will often stumble and stumble. Keep going. Soon you will have the hardest part behind you. Everything has its price. Nothing is really free. In your attempts with the Mastermind principle, you are wrestling with nature in its highest and noblest form, and nature cannot be tricked or taken advantage of. She will not hand you the wish of your desire until you have shown constant, unyielding, and persistent effort. There is nothing more to say on this subject. You have now been shown what you must do, when you must do it, how you must do it, and why you must do it. And let me say one final thing. Failure to broaden one's spiritual horizons has condemned many a man to a life of passive onlooking.